The alarm bells screamed through the bridge of the UES Defiance, but Captain Jake Morrison barely heard them anymore. He had been listening to those same warning sounds for 3 weeks straight. His tired eyes stared at the main screen, watching. Red dots move closer to Earth. Each dot was a Zarathi warship, and there were thousands of them. "Sir, we're getting reports from Mars," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, her voice shaking. The last defense station just went dark. Jake closed his eyes. For a moment. Mars had held out longer than anyone expected, but now it was gone. Just like Europa. Just like Titan. Just like every other human world the Zarathi had touched. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. 12, sir, not counting the Defiance." Amy's fingers moved quickly over her console. "Admiral Carter is asking for you on the comm." Jake straightened his uniform and walked to the communication station. Admiral Lisa Carter's face appeared on the screen. She looked as tired as he felt. Her gray hair was messy, and her eyes showed the weight of watching humanity die. "Jake," she said without any greeting. "The Zarathi fleet will reach Earth in 6 hours. We need to talk about our options." "What options?" Jake asked. "We have 13 ships against their entire fleet. We can't win this fight." Lisa nodded slowly. "I know, but we can make them pay for every inch. Maybe buy enough time for the evacuation ships to get away." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was young, most of them barely out of training. They had joined the Colonial Defense Force to protect humanity, not to die in a hopeless battle. But they were all that stood between Earth and the Zarathi. "Admiral, what about Dr. Foster's project? The one she's been working on in the underground lab?" Lisa shook her head. "Amy's sister has been working on that quantum weapon for months. It's not ready. Even if it was, we don't know if it would work." On the surface of Earth, Commander Ryan Taylor crouched behind a broken wall in what used to be New Geneva. The Avra city had been beautiful once, with tall buildings and green parks. Now it was just rubble and smoke. Zarathi landing ships had been dropping troops for hours. "How many civilians did we get out?" he asked Sergeant Bill Harris, who was reloading his plasma rifle. "About half the city, sir. The rest are hiding in the underground tunnels. We're doing our best to keep the bugs away from the shelter entrances." Ryan looked at his soldiers. They were good people, but they were not soldiers. Most of them had been farmers, teachers, or shopkeepers before the war. Now they held weapons and tried to look brave while aliens that looked like giant insects hunted them through their own streets. "Sir," called Private Jenny Walsh from her position at the window. "I see movement. Lots of it." Ryan crawled over to look. Zarathi drones were moving down the street in perfect formation. Each one was 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and armor that seemed to be alive. Their weapons were part of their bodies, growing from their arms like extra limbs. "They move like one person," Jenny whispered. "It's like they all share the same brain." Ryan nodded. That was what made the Zarathi so dangerous. They never made mistakes because they never disagreed with each other. They never got scared or confused. They just did what their queen mind told them to do. "Wait for my signal," Ryan said to his team. "Remember, aim for the joints in their armor, and don't try to be heroes. We just need to slow them down." Deep, underground, Dr. Amy Foster worked by the light of emergency power. Her laboratory was small and cramped, filled with machines that hummed and sparked. She had been working on the Prometheus Fire project for 8 months, trying to build a weapon that could stop the Zarathi. The problem was that normal weapons did not work well against them. The Zarathi ships were alive, able to heal themselves, and adapt to any attack. Their personal armor did the same thing. Humanity needed something completely different. Amy believed the answer was in quantum physics. She had discovered that human brains could affect probability in ways that other species could not. It was a small effect, but if she could make it bigger, it might be enough. "The power levels are still too low," she said to her assistant, Dr. Pete Murphy. "We need more than just brain power. We need emotion. We need hope." Pete looked at her with tired eyes. "Hope? Amy, have you looked outside lately? We're about to lose Earth. Where are we supposed to find hope?" Amy did not answer. She knew Pete was right. But she also knew that humans had always been good at hoping for impossible things. That was what made them different from every other species they had met. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake watched the Zarathi fleet get closer. Each ship was huge, some of them bigger than Earth's moon. They moved in perfect formation like a dance of death. "Sir," said Lieutenant Ben Parker from the weapons station, "we're getting a message from the lead Zarathi ship. Put it on screen." The main display changed to show a Zarathi commander. It looked like all the others, with compound eyes and mandibles that clicked when it spoke. But Jake could see something different about this one. It had scars on its armor, and its eyes seemed older. "Human commander," the alien said in perfect English. "I am War Leader Kethvar of the Zarathi Third Fleet. You have fought well, but your resistance ends now. Surrender, and your people will be allowed to live as workers in our empire." Jake stood up straight. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defiance. We don't surrender, not now, not ever." The Zarathi's mandibles clicked faster. "Your species is interesting, human. You fight even when you cannot win. Your emotions make you weak, but they also make you unpredictable. The Queen Mind finds this disturbing." "Good," Jake said. "Tell your Queen Mind that humans don't like being predictable." The alien tilted its head. "You will die here, human. Your planet will fall. Your species will serve or be destroyed. This is the way of the universe." "Maybe," Jake replied. "But we'll make you work for it." The screen went dark. Jake turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. These young people had signed up to defend humanity, and now they were about to die trying to do exactly that. "All hands, this is the captain," he said over the ship's communication system. "In 6 hours, we're going to fight the biggest battle in human history. We're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. We're probably going to lose, but we're going to show these aliens what it means to be human. We're going to fight with everything we have, and we're going to make them remember us." He paused, looking at each face on his bridge. "Today we stand for every human who ever lived. Today we stand for everyone who believed that freedom was worth fighting for. Today we make our last stand." The crew nodded, and Jake could see something in their eyes that had not been there before. It was not hope exactly. It was something fiercer than that. It was the stubborn human refusal to give up even when giving up made sense. Outside, the Zarathi fleet continued its approach, but on the bridge of the Defiance, something had changed. The humans were still going to fight, and sometimes that was enough to change everything. The first wave of Zarathi ships hit Earth's orbital defenses at exactly 14 hours. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Defiance as humanity's last line of defense crumbled like paper. The massive defense platforms that had taken 50 years to build were destroyed in minutes. "Sir, the orbital stations are gone," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see her hands shaking. "Admiral Carter is ordering all ships to form up behind us." Jake looked at the tactical display. 12 human ships against a fleet that covered half the sky. It was not a battle. It was suicide. But sometimes suicide was the only choice left. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison," he said into the comm. "We're going to do something that will probably get us all killed. We're going to ram straight through their formation and hit their command ship." The response was immediate. "Sir, that's impossible," came the voice of Captain Sue Williams from the UES Guardian. "We'll never make it through their fleet." "Maybe not," Jake replied. "But we have something they don't expect. We have Dr. Foster's weapon, and we have nothing left to lose." Deep in the underground laboratory, Dr. Amy Foster was making final adjustments to the Prometheus fire device. It looked like a metal sphere covered in wires and glowing crystals. Pete Murphy stood beside her, reading power levels from a tablet. "The quantum field is stable," Pete said. "But Amy, are you sure about this? The weapon requires human consciousness to work. If you're wrong about how our brains affect reality, then we die," Amy finished. "But Pete, I've run the tests. Human minds can change probability. We can literally think things into existence. No other species can do that." She looked at the device. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The problem is it doesn't just need any human thoughts, it needs hope. Real hope, not fake hope. The operator has to truly believe that we can win. Pete stared at her. Hope? Amy, we're about to lose everything. How do you expect someone to have hope right now? Amy touched the smooth surface of the weapon. I don't know. But humans have always been good at hoping for impossible things. Maybe that's enough. On the surface, Commander Ryan Taylor was learning something important about the Zarathi. His team had been fighting them in the ruins of New Geneva for 2 hours, and he noticed something strange. The aliens were very good at following plans, but they were terrible at dealing with surprises. Jenny, try something crazy, he called to Private Walsh, who was pinned down behind an overturned car. Don't follow your training. Do something stupid. Jenny looked at him like he was insane, but she nodded and did something no military manual would ever recommend. She threw her rifle away, picked up a piece of broken concrete, and charged straight at a group of Zarathi drones while screaming at the top of her lungs. The aliens froze. For just a moment, they did not know what to do. Jenny used that moment to dive past them and activate a grenade she had taped to a gas line. The explosion took out half the building and 6 Zarathi soldiers. It works, Ryan whispered. They can't handle crazy. He grabbed his radio. All units, this is Commander Taylor. Stop fighting like soldiers. Start fighting like angry humans. Be unpredictable, be stupid, be anything except what they expect. The change was immediate. Human fighters across the city started doing things that made no military sense. They used kitchen knives when they had guns. They sang songs while throwing grenades. They laughed while running toward certain death. And the Zarathi began to struggle. Their perfect coordination started to break down as they tried to respond to actions that had no logic. Major Kate Sullivan had been watching the battle from the command center when she realized what was happening. She had been a military psychologist, before the war, studying how soldiers dealt with stress. Now she was seeing something amazing. They're a hive mind, she said to Colonel Bob Martinez, who was coordinating the ground defense. The Zarathi share one consciousness. That makes them strong, but it also makes them weak. How do you mean? Bob asked, not taking his eyes off the tactical display. They think like one person, Kate explained. One very logical, very predictable person. But humans think like individuals. We're chaotic. We're emotional. We do things that don't make sense. And that scares them. She grabbed the communication system. All units, this is Major Sullivan. I want you to stop being soldiers and start being human. Use your emotions, be angry, be scared, be stupid. The more unpredictable you are, the better. In space, the Defiance and the remaining human ships were pushing through the Zarathi fleet. Jake had never seen anything like it. Enemy ships the size of cities fired at them with weapons that could crack moons. The human ships should have been destroyed instantly. But something strange was happening. Some of the Zarathi shots were missing. Some of their weapons were malfunctioning. It was as if luck itself was on humanity's side. Dr. Amy Foster felt it, too, down in her laboratory. The Prometheus fire device was responding to something. The quantum fields were shifting in ways that should have been impossible. Pete, look at this, she called. The probability readings are changing. Something is affecting reality on a quantum level. Pete looked at the data and went pale. Amy, this is impossible. It's like someone is changing the laws of physics. Not someone, Amy said quietly. Everyone. Every human who's fighting right now. Every person who still believes we can win. They're all affecting reality without knowing it. She understood now. The weapon did not create the effect. Humans had always been able to do it. The weapon just made it stronger and more focused. We need to get this to the Defiance, she said. Captain Morrison needs to know what's really happening. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake was starting to believe in miracles. His ship should have been destroyed 10 times over, but they were still alive. They were still fighting. And somehow, they were getting closer to the Zarathi command ship. Sir, incoming transmission from Dr. Foster, Amy said. The scientist's face appeared on the screen. She looked excited and terrified at the same time. Captain, the weapon is ready. But you need to understand something. It doesn't just need an operator. It needs someone who truly believes we can win. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was young and scared, but they were still here. They were still fighting. Doctor, right now I've got a ship full of people who are too stubborn to give up. Will that work? Amy smiled for the first time in weeks. Captain, stubbornness is just hope with attitude. Yes, that will work perfectly. The Zarathi command ship was getting larger on the main screen. It was a living thing, covered in armor that pulsed like a heartbeat. Jake could see weapon ports opening like eyes, preparing to destroy his ship. All hands prepare for final approach, he announced. We're going to ram that ship and activate the weapon. If this works, we'll have given humanity a chance. If it doesn't work, at least we'll have died trying. Lieutenant Ben Parker looked up from his station. Sir, what if we actually win? Jake smiled. Then we'll have to figure out what to do next. But let's worry about that after we survive the next 10 minutes. The Defiance accelerated toward the enemy command ship. Behind them, the remaining human vessels followed, ready to fight to the end. Below them, Earth's defenders continued their chaotic, impossible resistance. And in the quantum fields that surrounded them all, something was changing. Reality itself was beginning to bend toward a new possibility. The possibility that sometimes hope was stronger than logic. That sometimes the impossible was just another word for what had not happened yet. The final battle was about to begin. The Defiance shook as Zarathi weapons hit its hull. Captain Jake Morrison held onto his chair as sparks flew from damaged control panels. The enemy command ship was now so close that it filled the entire main screen. Its living armor pulsed with a sickly green light. Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Lieutenant Amy Foster. We're losing atmosphere. Keep us steady, Jake ordered. Dr. Foster, are you ready with the weapon? In her laboratory, Dr. Amy Foster's hands moved over the controls of the Prometheus fire device. The metal sphere was glowing now, responding to the desperate emotions of every human in the fleet. But something was wrong with the readings. Captain, the quantum field is unstable, she called through the comm. I need someone to operate the weapon manually. Someone who really believes we can win. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was brave, but he could see doubt in their eyes. They were fighting because they had to, not because they thought they could actually win. I'll do it, said Lieutenant Ben Parker, standing up from his weapons station. Sir, I've got a little sister back on Earth. I have to believe we can save her. Amy nodded. Come down to the lab, hurry! As Ben ran toward the elevator, the Defiance finally reached the Zarathi command ship. Jake had never seen anything so big. The alien vessel was like a living mountain, covered in weapon ports and armor that seemed to breathe. At its center was a massive opening that looked like a mouthful of teeth. Take us into that opening, Jake ordered. We're going inside. The pilot, Ensign Carol White, stared at him. Sir, that's suicide. Maybe, Jake replied. But it's also the only way to get close enough for the weapon to work. The Defiance flew into the mouth of the enemy ship. Inside, the walls were alive. They pulsed and moved like the inside of a giant heart. Strange lights flickered in the darkness. It was like flying through a nightmare. Sir, I'm reading massive life signs, Amy reported. There are millions of Zarathi on this ship. Not millions, Jake corrected. One mind controlling millions of bodies. In the laboratory, Ben Parker stood before the Prometheus fire device. Dr. Amy Foster was explaining how it worked, but he could barely hear her over the sound of his own heartbeat. You have to focus on hope, Amy was saying. Not just wanting to win, but truly believing that we can win. The weapon reads your thoughts and makes them real on a quantum level. Ben nodded. I understand. I think. No, you have to more than think, Amy said urgently. You have to feel it. You have to know it in your heart. Ben closed his eyes and thought about his sister. Lucy was only 8 years old. She loved to draw pictures of spaceships and dream about visiting other planets. He could not let the Zarathi take that away from her. I'm ready, he said. Amy activated the device. The metal sphere rose into the air, spinning slowly. Energy crackled around it like lightning. Ben placed his hands on the control surface and felt the weapon connect to his mind. Suddenly, he could feel everything. Every human on Earth. Every soldier fighting in the ruins of New Geneva. Every civilian hiding in the underground shelters. Every crew member on every ship in the fleet. Their fear, their hope, their stubborn refusal to give up. And he could feel something else. The Zarathi Queen Mind. It was vast and cold and logical. It had been controlling its people for so long that it had forgotten what it was like to be an individual. But now, for the first time in centuries, it was afraid. "Fire the weapon," Amy whispered. Ben focused all his hope, all his belief, all his love for his sister into the device. The Prometheus fire erupted in a wave of invisible energy that spread through the entire Zarathi command ship. The effect was immediate and terrible. Every Zarathi drone on the ship suddenly stopped moving. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then, chaos. The drones began to scream. Not the clicking sounds they usually made, but actual screams of confusion and terror. For the first time in their lives, they were thinking as individuals. The hive-mind connection was broken, and each Zarathi was alone in its own head. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake watched in amazement as the enemy ship began to tear itself apart. Zarathi soldiers were fighting each other in the corridors. Some were trying to escape. Others were curled up in corners, overwhelmed by the experience of being alone with their own thoughts. "What did we do to them?" Amy asked. "We gave them free will," Jake replied, "and they don't know how to handle it." The chaos spread beyond the command ship. Throughout the Zarathi fleet, the same thing was happening. Ships that had moved in perfect formation were now colliding with each other. Some were trying to retreat, while others attacked randomly. The Queen Mind's control was breaking down everywhere. On Earth, Commander Ryan Taylor watched as the Zarathi ground forces suddenly stopped fighting. The alien soldiers stood still for a moment, then began to panic. Some threw down their weapons and ran. Others started fighting each other. The perfect invasion force had become a mob of confused individuals. "All units, advance now," Ryan ordered. "The enemy is in chaos, push them back." Human forces across the planet began their counterattack. The Zarathi, experiencing individual fear for the first time, had no idea how to coordinate their defense. They were still dangerous, but they were no longer invincible. Major Kate Sullivan coordinated the push from her command center. "It's working," she reported to Colonel Bob Martinez. "The aliens are falling back everywhere. Whatever happened up there, it's given us a chance." But the real shock came when some of the Zarathi began to surrender. It had never happened before in the history of the war. Zarathi did not surrender. They fought until they died. But now some of them were laying down their weapons and raising their hands. "They're trying to communicate," reported Sergeant Bill Harris from his position in New Geneva. "Sir, I think some of them want to talk." One of the Zarathi approached, slowly, its 4 arms raised. When it spoke, its voice was different. Instead of the cold, mechanical tone they usually used, it sounded almost human. "Please," it said in broken English. I do not want to fight anymore. I am scared." Ryan stared at the alien. "You're scared?" The Zarathi nodded. "I have thoughts. My own thoughts. The Queen Mind is gone from my head. I am alone. It is terrible and wonderful." Similar scenes were happening all across the battlefield. Some Zarathi were still fighting, but others were experiencing doubt, fear, and individual desire for the first time in their lives. The perfect unity that had made them so dangerous was breaking apart. In space, the Zarathi fleet was in complete disarray. Ships were fleeing in all directions. Some were still loyal to the Queen Mind and trying to regroup. Others were operating independently, making their own decisions about whether to fight or run. Admiral Lisa Carter, commanding from the UES Valor, saw the opportunity. "All ships advance. Hit them while they're confused." The remaining human vessels, joined by ships that had been hiding throughout the solar system, launched a coordinated attack. For the first time in the war, humanity had the advantage. On the Fa Defiance, Jake received a communication from the Zarathi command ship. The Queen Mind herself appeared on the screen, but she looked different now. Her compound eyes showed confusion and something that might have been pain. "Human," she said, her voice no longer cold and confident. "What have you done to us?" "We gave you what you gave up long ago," Jake replied. "We gave you the right to choose." The Queen Mind was silent for a long moment. "My children are leaving me. They are thinking their own thoughts. They are making their own choices. Some of them are choosing to help you." "That's what freedom means," Jake said. "The right to choose, even if you choose wrong." The Queen Mind looked directly at him. "We came here to conquer you. We believed we were superior because we were united. But now I see that we were not united. We were enslaved. Even I was enslaved to the idea of perfect order." She paused. And when she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "Some of my children want to fight you still. Others want to join you. And I do not know what I want anymore." The tide of the war had turned. But this was only the beginning. Humanity had not just won a battle. They had accidentally started a revolution that would change both species forever. 3 months after the battle that changed everything, Captain Jake Morrison stood in what used to be the enemy command center. The Zarathi Queen Mind sat across from him at a table that had been built by both human and alien hands. Her name, he had learned, was Zethkala, though she had not used her individual name in over 1,000 years. "The reports from the outer colonies are getting better," Jake said, placing a tablet on the table. "Most of the fighting has stopped. Your people and mine are learning to work together." Zethkala nodded slowly. Her movements were different now. Before, every Zarathi had moved in exactly the same way. Now she had her own way of holding her head, her own way of using her hands. It was strange and wonderful to see. "Many of my children still do not understand," she said. "They ask me to take back control, to make them part of the hive mind again. They say freedom is too hard." Jake understood that feeling. Freedom was hard. It meant making your own choices and living with the results. "Some of my people are saying the same thing. They want the government to make all their decisions for them. But that's not how freedom works." Dr. Amy Foster entered the room carrying a cup of coffee and a bowl of something that looked like glowing soup. The Zarathi had strange eating habits, but Amy had been learning to cook their food. It was one of many small ways that humans and Zarathi were learning to understand each other. "The latest test results are in," Amy announced, sitting down at the table. "The consciousness shield technology is working. We can protect both human and Zarathi minds from the cosmic disaster that's heading our way." The cosmic disaster was the reason the Zarathi had become a hive mind in the first place. Their home system had been hit by something that destroyed individual thought, turning entire populations into mindless drones. The Zarathi had survived by linking their minds together, but they had lost their freedom in the process. "How long do we have?" Zethkala asked. "About 5 years before it reaches this part of the galaxy," Amy replied. "But with both our technologies, working together we can build shields for every populated world." Jake smiled. "It's funny. You came here to conquer us, and instead we're going to save each other." Commander Ryan Taylor walked into the room, followed by a Zarathi who had taken the name Dave. It was a human name, chosen because Dave liked the sound of it. Many of the free Zarathi were choosing human names, while others were making up completely new ones. "The new training program is working well," Ryan reported. "Human and Zarathi soldiers are learning to fight together. Dave here is one of our best instructors." Dave clicked his mandibles, and what Jake had learned was the Zarathi version of a laugh. "Human soldiers are very good at being unpredictable. Zarathi soldiers are very good at following plans. Together we are stronger than either species alone." "Speaking of working together," Amy said, "I have some news. The first mixed colony is ready to launch. Humans and Zarathi living together on a new world." Jake raised his eyebrows. "Are you sure they're ready for that?" "The volunteers have been training for months," Amy explained. "They've learned each other's languages and customs. Some of them have even become friends. Sethkala looked thoughtful. In the old days, such a thing would have been impossible. We would have seen your people as inferior beings to be conquered or destroyed. Now I see them as teachers. Teachers? Jake asked. You taught us how to be individuals, she explained. You showed us that chaos and uncertainty are not things to be feared, but things to be celebrated. You gave us back our souls. Major Kate Sullivan joined them, carrying a data pad full of reports. Her new job was helping former Zarathi drones adjust to individual life. It was not easy work, but it was important. We're making progress, she reported. Most of the free Zarathi are adapting well to independence. They're choosing careers, forming relationships, even creating art. Though, I have to say Zarathi poetry is very strange. Dave clicked his mandibles again. Human poetry is also strange. But strange is good. Strange means we are thinking for ourselves. Jake looked around the room at this impossible group. A human captain, a Zarathi queen, a scientist who had accidentally started a revolution, and soldiers from two species that had been enemies just months ago. It should not have worked, but somehow it did. What about the Zarathi who don't want freedom, he asked. The ones who still follow the old ways? Sethkala's expression became sad. They have formed their own groups. They call themselves the pure ones. They refuse to accept individual thought. They still believe that the hive mind is the only way to survive. Are they dangerous? Ryan asked. Some of them are, Sethkala admitted. They see the free Zarathi as traitors. They see humans as a disease that must be cured. There have been attacks on the mixed colonies. Jake nodded. He had expected this. Change was never easy, and some people would always resist it. But that was the price of freedom. We'll deal with them, he said. Together. Dr. Amy Foster stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see something that would have been impossible a year ago. Human children were playing with young Zarathi in a park that had been built where New Geneva used to stand. The city had been rebuilt, but it was different now. Better. You know what I think is the most amazing thing about all this? She said. It's not that we won the war, it's that we turned our enemies into friends. Not all of them, Sethkala reminded her. No, not all of them, Amy agreed. But enough to change everything. Jake received a message on his communicator. It was from Admiral Lisa Carter, who was now in charge of the joint human Zarathi fleet. She had news about the deep space exploration mission. The scout ships have found something interesting, Jake announced after reading the message. There are other species out there. Some of them are facing the same cosmic disaster that threatens us. They need help. Sethkala leaned forward. What kind of help? The kind we can give them, Jake replied. We can teach them what we've learned. We can show them that freedom is stronger than control, that chaos is more powerful than order. Dave stood up, his forearms spread wide. We will help them as you helped us. We will give them the gift of choice. Jake smiled. A year ago, humanity had been facing extinction. Now they were planning to spread freedom across the galaxy. It was not what anyone had expected, but it was better than anyone had hoped. The cosmic disaster will be here in 5 years, Amy said. But I'm not worried anymore. When it arrives, it won't find a galaxy full of slaves and conquerors. It will find a galaxy full of free minds working together. Outside the window, the mixed group of children continued their game. They were playing something that was part human tag and part Zarathi hunting ritual. It should not have worked, but like everything else in their new world, it did. The war was over. The real work was just beginning. But for the first time in a long time, both species had something they had almost forgotten how to feel. They had hope for the future. And as they had learned, hope was the most powerful weapon in the universe.